Welcome to Real Estate Agent Superstars. I'm your host, RJ Baxter with Intercap Lending, and we have got an awesome guest for you today, my good buddy, Tim Murray of EXP Realty Denver. He's going to join us to share his story about how he went from Rookie of the Year real estate agent to focused on world travel and some of his adventures. And maybe his production fell off a little bit during that time to what he didn't really want to do, or he wanted to do more, and how he's ramped it up here recently with EXP and really started to make things take off again. So welcome to the show, Tim. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, rock and roll. Thanks, RJ. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So Tim is an awesome story. He's like an adventure guy that does he's a big skier, a big mountain biker, a big outdoors guy. He loves to travel the world. And he's kind of incorporated that into his business. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. But tell me, first of all, Tim, how did you get involved with real estate? How long ago was this?
Yeah, so I got my license back in 2005 here in Denver. Prior to that, I spent my career as a personal trainer and strength and conditioning specialist, and I still coach quite a bit. And at that time, I was just in a lull in what I was doing. I was just kind of in that ebb of personal business ownership where I was just kind of burnt out on all, just listening to, my days were filled with listening to people's excuses about their health and wellness. And it just, kind of got old. Mm-hmm. And so I sat down with my mom, one of my greatest advisors, and we were just kind of brainstorming about what was out there, like what other career paths are there besides being a personal trainer and a coach. And she suggested real estate. And I had never considered real estate, and she said, hey, everybody I know that has a personality like yours and has the drive like you have, they're really successful real estate agents. And I was like, interesting. And I started to look into it, and it was like, wow, how cool is this? Like, there's a managing broker, but I wouldn't really have a boss, and like I could set my own hours, and instead of selling gym memberships at $80 a month or personal training packages at $500 a month or whatever, it was like, wow, I get to sell something that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, sure, let's check it out. And so, so I got licensed, and quickly, I won Rookie of the Year with Keller Williams right out the gate, and it was amazing. Like, I had never made that much money, and worked that few of hours, or felt like no stress, no whatever. I almost felt guilty the first couple of years I sold real estate. I honestly was just like, wow, this isn't even fair that I'm making this much money.
Yeah. I love, you told me the story about your first check that you got, and you went to the car and you're looking at it like, this can't be real. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah. It was the first, back then, I mean, houses weren't that expensive and commission checks weren't that big. And it was still like the first time that I had like a deep 5-digit check in my hand, where it was like somebody was paying me, thousands of dollars to do something. And it was like, I had already done it, the previously in personal training was like, well, you get paid up front, and then you gotta see like how many of the 12 sessions are people going to cancel, and blah, 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 and da-da-da-da-da. And it was all of a sudden like, oh, wow, I just spent like the last 45 days interacting with these cool people, and then they went to the closing table and they handed me this huge-ass check. And I was just, I was dumbfounded. I was just like, there's no way, like the title company must have screwed up. There's somebody else deserves some of this money.
Yeah, right. So you hit that out of the gates, you hit the ground running, and you're Rookie of the Year. And there's a lot of agents with Keller Williams. That's an impressive accomplishment. How did you do it? How did you come out of the gate so fast?
Yeah, so again, this is 2005, and we didn't have a lot of the technology that we have now. Things were a little bit different in the market back then. So I've always really appreciated being on the phone. I've got no problem. I love interacting with people on the phone. It's just easy for me. And so back then you could go into the office and just sign up for office hours and man the phones. And back then, the real estate signs, when there were listings, the office would put the sign in the yard and it would be the office general number on the sign. And so you could just sign up as a rookie agent. You could hang out in the, like in the bullpen in the office and just answer incoming calls off of sign calls. People were like, hey, I'm driving by 123 Main Street and I'm interested in this Keller Williams sign that's in the yard. Like, what can you tell me about it? And to me, I was just like, it was the first time in my life I had ever fielded incoming, warm leads. There wasn't some asshole throwing a phone book at me telling me to like make more calls, to cold calls. And it was like, wow, dude, this is so nice. This is easy. And then, the other thing back then, like, we also did a lot of, I wasn't on a team, but I had some, peers that were hungry and young. And we did a ton of bandit signs back then. I mean, I would meet my buddies at 10 o'clock at night and we would have like 200 bandit signs that would just say like, house for sale, call now, investors wanted, whatever. And we would just go, we'd stay out for 2 or 3 hours till midnight, 1 in the morning, just putting little yellow bandit signs all over. We would pick an area of town and just be like saturated. And then
So maybe I'm the only one in the room right now that doesn't know what a bandit sign is. What is that?
Oh, just like, you see them like on the side, like on the exit ramps on the highways and stuff, like just little totally hand scribbled signs that don't have a business name on them, they don't have your broker's office on them, and you're not marketing anything specific. You're just like, hey, call this number if you're interested in investing in real estate. And like the number we would put on there would go to our lender. And our lender was just fielding hundreds of calls a week. And, this is prior to the crash, right? So, this was like, I mean, we could put signs out that say like, your dog could buy a house, call this number,
and it was true back then.
And it was true. It was true. It was totally like, we'll get your dog a social security number. Well, off to the races. Your dog will get a loan. You have the best dog house in Highlands Ranch.
Yeah, totally. And no, I don't think there was very many rules back then as to what you could or couldn't do on advertising either.
Not really. Yeah.
It was like the Wild West.
It was the total Wild West, which fit my personality perfectly. I was just like, again, first few years I was in real estate, I was just like, man, this is insane. Like there's no regulation. The crazier I get, the more money I make, and the more everybody at the office loves me. So let's do this.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So fast forward a couple of years, the housing crisis happened. How did you weather that storm? What happened during that period?
Yeah, so that like through the recession and all that, I was really fortunate enough to be surrounded by investors. We had already done a lot. I had done a lot of marketing to investors, and I was investing in myself. And we flipped houses through the recession, and I got a lot of confidence about that. And again, it was just to me, it was an opportunity in the market where if you had confidence and tenacity, the sky was the limit. If you were willing to go in and purchase houses that weren't that great, you'd get the deals done and you'd make money. And we picked up like before. I mean, and again, this is a long time. This is, 10, 15 years ago. Wholesaling was just starting. Like, they're just the idea of like, going and finding the most rundown piece of crap house in the neighborhood and knocking on the door every day until somebody answered and being like, hey, like, I'm going to give you cash so you can move on with your life and, let's go. I got you. And so back then, there were only a few people doing that, And
that's crazy.
Here we are, like 12, 15 years later, it's like the wealthiest people I know got their start doing that. I mean,
Yep.
guys I've helped buy dozens of properties with, and now they own hundreds of doors, and
Yep.
awesome.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, people that are, if anyone's afraid of a recession out there and housing actually does crash, which I don't think it will, but if it does, there's fortunes made during those times.
There is.
So
You're
people that are out,
absolutely right.
yep, people that are
Yeah.
out investing and making things happen during those times are doing really well.
Every time somebody sends me a YouTube video about the sky is falling and it's the end of the world and American economy is going to tank and that the housing bubble is going to burst, I'm just like, fucking great, man. We're going to get rich. Like the people that are
Like, nice,
brave and
bring it.
bold. Yeah, bring it. Like, man, that's where wealth is created. Like let's go.
Yeah.
Like, buy the dip, man. Like, let's do it.
Yeah. It's like another word for housing crash is opportunity.
100%.
Housing opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for people buying primary residences, if they're not going to move, then just weather the storm. It's your house.
Yeah.
No big deal. So,
Yeah, you don't hear. I don't. I've never heard anybody say, or maybe they'll start the conversation with like, "Oh yeah, I bought my house in 2010, and I wasn't really sure like if it was the right decision, and look at me now, I've got $400,000 worth of equity. It's tripled in value, and who
yep.
would have thunk that? Who would have ever imagined?" And it's like, yeah, hello, it's real estate.
Yeah. And having years of experience like you have stories of people that have done that, and you can reference. People love stories and telling stories about people that happened to. I mean, that's helped me during this time to help people understand that real estate's a long-term investment, and there's people 10, 15 years ago that were hesitant that have done really well.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Super well.
yeah. Yeah. So one thing I love about you, Tim, is how you've taken the things you love to do in your lifestyle, and real estate has enabled you to do even more of that. So tell me about how real estate was the perfect fit for you from what I can see, and you've really taken that to an extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been driven, and I've also had like the priorities of lifestyle have been way more important to me than wealth development. So
Mm-hmm.
I I realized early on, like, okay, hey, you know what? This is the number of deals and transactions I need to be involved with every year, where I get to go
Mm-hmm.
and do whatever I want because I have enough money and enough time, and I'm not stressed out or freaking out. And I watched a lot of other incredibly successful real estate agents get super burnt out. And,
Mm-hmm.
where I was just like, hey man, you know what? I can close 8, 10, 12 deals a year just in my sleep and make
Yeah.
six figures and be able to travel. And I really leveraged that a lot. I let my sphere and I let my peers and I let everybody know, like, hey, look, I'm going to ski 60 days a year. I'm going to travel internationally up to 3 months a year, take 12 weeks off, and have those conversations to say, like, just because I'm in Switzerland racing an Ironman or I'm in Argentina climbing a mountain, it doesn't mean that I can't work. It doesn't mean I'm not going to answer my phone. It doesn't mean that I don't have access to the internet. So it wasn't the end of the world. And I think that I watched a lot of other agents just get burnt out and frustrated and cynical about being overwhelmed with, doing, 30, 40 deals a year and what that looked like. And I was not, yeah, I was like, hey, every year I'd go to the awards ceremony and I'd be like, ha ha ha, look at that's cool. Like, that'd be really cool if I made $400,000 in real estate one year. And look at those guys. They're not skiing 60 days a year. They're not going to
Right.
Playa del Carmen twice a year. Like, I felt like my award, my like my trophy rack of what I've done in my life far exceeds any little glass figure thing that anybody's gotten from any real estate company that I've ever seen. Like, hey, cool, you're being a top producer is cool, and living a fulfilled life is way cooler. And so,
Mm-hmm.
over the last decade for sure, I realized I could fulfill my largest dreams. So, a year ago this month, I climbed Mount Everest. I was in Nepal climbing Mount Everest last year, and real estate afforded me the opportunity to do that.
That's so cool. I think way too many people in our business lose track of that, how important life is and how important those other things are. They're just
Yeah,
married to their job.
100%.
So for
Yeah, and I
so your client so your so your clients didn't have a problem with that, or did you have some that did have a problem with it, and then you just chose to not work with them because they couldn't accept the fact that you weren't always right here?
Yeah, I think and even to this day, I think I'm still struggling with like trying to get my sphere and my clients and everybody to realize like I'm not a professional. I have been in the past. Before real estate, I was a professional athlete. Right now, I'm not. I'm no longer a professional athlete, and I'm not. I
Right.
think a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're just a professional ski bum," and I'm like, "No, I'm not that either. I'm a real estate agent that does well enough to support a really cool lifestyle, and I still rely on
Mm-hmm.
your referrals and your business to accommodate that lifestyle." And so that's a conversation that I have often. Again, to reiterate, like, hey, I've got a whole team of people around me that support me in real estate. So if I know, like, for instance, last year, I was in Everest Base Camp for 7 weeks, and yeah, we had Wi-Fi. And was it realistic for me to do real estate transactions during that time? No, not at all. I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
stay alive. And so, I had my managing broker and, five other agents working on our team on my behalf. And yet some deals got closed on my behalf during that time, and it was successful and it was fine and everything's cool. And the
Mm-hmm.
majority of the time, it's just like, hey, I'm available. Like, even if I'm in Mexico, or I'm skiing in Canada, or like, heck, you and we've skied together in Japan, and it's just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I know 1 week a year I'm going to be in northern Japan skiing, and I know that for that week my business hours are 4:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. or 8 a.m. because of the time difference, and I can get
Mm-hmm.
stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And real estate has provided that flexibility. And if push comes to shove, if somebody wants to see a house or write an offer or whatever, I've got plenty of agents that will show properties for me. And I can still write the offer. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the great thing about what you have set up is your team and what you have going with the XP and all that. Um, so tell me more about this Everest thing. That was a life dream of yours, and you actually went there last year, right? 2022.
Yeah, I did. Yep. Yeah, I had conjured up the idea of climbing Mount Everest when I was 16 years old. And and I knew at that time when I put it on my like life goal list, I had it that I needed to do it on or before my 50th birthday, because when I was 16,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of being 50 just seemed like that's it. Like, when you turn 51, you're just dinosaur. You're gonna tank, drive off the cliff, be
It's like
done,
all over.
all over. Like, yeah, you're just,
Yeah.
yeah, you put you in the easy chair and sip lemonade and watch TV and you're done. And so, you know, so as I came, was edging up closer to my 50th birthday, COVID happened and international travel got shut down, and mountaineering permits got shut down. And so yeah, my goal of getting on the mountain in 2021 got pushed back a year, and so that was fine. That it actually allowed me to train a little bit more, and iron some kinks
Mm-hmm.
out, and just where my head was and where my body was, and just get my head wrapped around being spending that much time up above 17,000 feet, and then further up the mountain. And And so, yeah, I just, the last 4 years actually were dedicated to training and preparing to climb Mount Everest. And my production in real estate did drop off for sure. It wasn't a rosy, like on the lifestyle pendulum work, lifestyle balance, lifestyle totally trumped
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you have to do to prepare to go to Everest? What kind of training regimen were you under?
Wow. Outside of just carrying heavy stuff uphill, I tried to spend as much time above 10,000 feet as I could.
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time. I had, I don't know if there's a name for what I did, but I had it since early on in life when I first started dreaming about going to Everest. I'd done a lot of research about what mountains you should climb to prepare. Like, what's the natural progression of mountains to climb? So, back
Mhm.
in, as early as 2016, I started making a point of booking trips to higher and higher places. So, in 2016, I did some trekking in Peru where I got to go above 16,000 feet. I climbed Mount Orizaba in Mexico, which is 18,600. I did all of the,
Hmm.
not all, but I did most of the significant mountains in North America. So, I've climbed Whitney a few times. I've done Hood and Baker and Rainier and countless 14ers
Mhm.
here in Colorado. And then I think, like, Rainier is a pretty serious undertaking, and I think a lot of people may not recognize that that's like legit mountaineering, open crevasses and rock fall and crampons and ice axes and ropes and all of it. It's the real deal. And
Mhm.
and for that matter, like, so is Mount Hood, and it's only 10,000. It's a 10,000 foot mountain. Like here in Colorado, I think we
Hmm.
we scoff at that. I mean, you can on any given
Right.
day you can wear your bikini on a 10,000 foot trail around here. It's no big deal. And in the Pacific
Right.
Northwest, it's kind of a big deal. And then I think just ramping it up to, in 2020 I climbed Denali, which is a huge undertaking. Highest peak in North
Mhm.
America, one of the seven summits. Again, a very, some people says rivals Everest, maybe harder than Everest. And for
Hmm.
me, that was a phenomenal experience. I had a great time on Denali. Like, just, I felt like I got stronger
Yeah.
every single day I was up there. Yeah.
How high is Denali?
Just over 20. It's like 20,300, I think.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, but it's cold and it's unsupported. Like, there's no, in a lot of the other, in the mountains of the world, the majority of the time, like all of the other seven summits, you can get a Sherpa or a donkey or a yak or a whatever, a horse, to carry all your shit. And on Denali, there's none of that. You carry everything.
Hmm.
You carry 3 weeks worth of stuff in a sled and in your backpack, and you got to haul all that crap up the mountain
Wow.
and then back down the mountain, and
That's a lot.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and it's fully self-contained because it's a really pristine national park. So, again, if you're not into the outdoors or not into the mountaineering scene, what fully self-contained really means is that pack it in, pack it out. Like, you shit in a bucket and you carry it. You carry your own excrement the whole time. You don't get to leave it somewhere. You bring it with you. And I think, like,
Yeah. I think that's enough. That's enough to deter most of the people listening, I think.
yeah. I think the normal person doesn't ever consider that. They don't consider. They've
No.
never in their life, never in your lifetime would you be like, I have it. I should do that. I should carry my own poop around with me. that's not. That's not normal.
I have a hard enough time with my dog's poop for 20 minutes carrying that around.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And I think, like, yeah, to me, it's kind of funny the lessons you learn about that stuff where you're like, you carry all this stuff up the mountain, and a lot of the weight is food, and you think, oh
Mhm.
man, the more we eat every day, the lighter our load's gonna be, and it's like, oh no, there's that green bucket over there filled with my load. It's not.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, so then after Denali, that was in the spring, early summer of 2020, and then I went to I went down to Argentina and I climbed Aconcagua, which is 21.8, a little higher, a little longer. And then it was time to go to Everest. That was like December, January of the cusp there, like 21, 22. And then I went over to Nepal, last April, and I spent 8 weeks in Nepal. And it was a big,
Nice.
by far the hardest, just ego destroying renewal of myself that I could have ever imagined. I mean, it was way.
Yeah.
I was not prepared.
Oh, really?
So.
So just generally for the whole thing, or just mentally or physically or all the above?
I showed up and I thought I was mentally and physically prepared. And I think mentally I was prepared for sure. And physically I thought I was prepared. And like getting up to base camp at 17,000 feet was great. I felt great. I felt fine. And when we settled into base camp and all the trekkers and the tourists and all the riffraff kind of disappear, and you're camping out on the side of the Khumbu Glacier, and the everything around, you're at 17,500 feet, and everything around you just goes straight up, another 10 plus thousand, 12,000 feet to the top of the world. And there's avalanches falling down around camp all night, every day. And you can hear the glacier cracking and moving. Wow. And, the conversation over breakfast is like who died on the route the day before. And it's a completely, like, saying that it's next level doesn't even give it justice. It's like 3 or 4 levels up from just about anything I had ever experienced. And so there was a whole new sense of anxiety for me around that I wasn't prepared for. And as we moved up the mountain, it became evident to me and my teammates that I was much slower, and I was not in the cardio. I was stronger than everybody there. I mean, I could carry. I was like I felt like I was as strong as the Sherpas. I could put 100 pounds on my back and walk around with it. And as we started moving up the hill and the oxygen became less and less, it was evident to me that strength was not what I needed. I needed to. I showed up. I showed up with probably 30 pounds of muscle that I did not need, that was not serving me on that mountain at all. And the people that were, briskly walking past me on the path were all these like pencil neck, emaciated creatures that could just move quickly. Like their power to weight ratio was way better than mine. I had a lot of power, but it came with too much weight. And so,
okay.
Like the spoiler alert of the story is that I made it to Camp 4 and I did not get to summit. The guide stopped me and said, "Hey, you know what? You're doing great, and you're moving way too slow, and we can't afford. There's not enough oxygen, and there's not enough people to carry extra oxygen tanks to accommodate your pace. So we're going to ask you to stay here at Camp 4." So I spent a little over 2 days at just above 26,000 feet, which is pretty interesting. Breathing out of an oxygen mask the whole time, 24/7, and sleeping with an oxygen mask on, and
wow.
Hanging out with like 60 to 100 mile an hour winds, trying to just rip our tent off the side of the mountain. And that was quite an experience. And it wasn't my dream.
Yeah.
That wasn't my dream wasn't to make it to 26,000. My dream was to make it to 29,000.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So
what was that
coming
like
back,
hearing from?
It was hard.
I was going to say, what was it like to hear that from the guide? That he wasn't.
It crushed my soul. It was soul crushing. It was like,
yeah.
It was like if I had already spent 99% of my physical energy getting to that point, and the energy that I had left to go to the top was all in my head. It was just like my will and my passion and my enthusiasm. And then to hear like, we're not going to let you. it took all that away. It took the remaining juice that I had right out of my system. And so,
I
you
bet.
know, yeah, it was a huge exercise in resilience and realizing that, like, to be able to turn the story around and be able to, like, be very grateful that I was healthy, that I wasn't dead, that I didn't have frostbite,
Mhm.
that I still had the opportunity to be where I was, and
Mhm.
in those moments too, to realize that a dream doesn't have to be a one-time event. And I think that a lot of us as human beings, when we think about goal setting, and if we take goal setting to the next level and we think about dreams and like what's a really big unattainable thing, and then you get the opportunity to
Mhm.
do it, you've probably painted that dream as a one-time occurrence because that's one of the things that makes a dream special. And so in that moment, when I was walking back down the Lhotse face, crying inside my ski goggles and trying to blow my nose out this, take my oxygen mask off and blow my nose and just, be completely defeated, having those thoughts of like, whoa, could I do this again? Like, do I want to do it again? Is it possible to do it again? And the
Mhm.
answers to all
Mhm.
those questions were yeah, unequivocally, yeah. Like, why the hell not? Like, cool. I'm just gonna put
Yeah.
this back in the bag of practice. Like, I just got like how cool is this? Like, yeah, my ego is completely destroyed. And physically, I'm fine. Like, I'm like, this is cool. I came out of the most intense practice session of my life unscathed. Maybe
Mhm.
psychologically, emotionally, I was hurting, but in the big picture of what's possible is like, hey, sweet, why not? I can dream this dream again.
Yeah. So it's in the plans to give it another
It
shot.
is, yeah. Yeah, I've got a 5 year, and my like I said, this month, a matter of fact, here in about 10 days is the 1 year anniversary of when I spent 2 days up at 26,000 feet. So our summit day was May 18th last year. I've got a
Okay.
bunch of buddies over there. I got friends over there right now that I'm keeping an eye on. They're climbing this year, and it's been cool,
Okay.
to watch their progress and see what's going on, and I think
Mhm.
like yeah, it's been a year, and I've probably in 4 more years from now, I'll be trying it again.
Nice. So
Yeah.
I have to ask this, and we're the same age, so no judgment here. But who's the oldest person that summited Everest? You know,
Ooh. Yeah. It's around 70,
like
73 or 74,
no
I
kidding.
think. Yeah.
So you got a lot of years left to do this.
Yeah. I
You're a
don't.
young guy compared to that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because like I'd asked the guides and the Sherpas last year when we were there because the other guys on my team last year were young. I mean, they were in regards to like Seven Summits mountaineering, they were young. They were both in their
Mhm.
30s. And I had asked the guides about that specifically. I was like, "Hey, man, are you seeing like what's the demographic up here, and are you seeing a shift in it?" And historically, they said, "Yeah, the average age is like closer to 60, and that's
Oh, no
based,
kidding. Okay.
yeah, and
Hmm.
it's based on affluence and money, way more so than ability." And I think there's something to be said in there about wisdom and years of experience, and you know that if you put somebody up there who's super young and super gung ho, they may not know themselves well enough to get through what's up there. And the people that, I mean, heck, when I was at Camp One on our summit rotation, when we were going up on our summit rotation, there were people coming down off the summit that had already summited that just got an earlier start in their whole program than we did, which was fine, no big deal. But I got to meet, I think the youngest female that's ever summited, an 18-year-old American girl. I met her. We crossed paths. She was walking down and I was walking up, and
Hmm.
the thoughts that went through my mind is like, this is a historical event because I think in the last, whatever 5 decades that people have been trying to climb Everest, financially, it's not, no 18-year-old can afford that. And now we're in a time where,
Yeah.
because of generational wealth or sponsorship or whatever, it's possible for much younger people to find the money. Like the two guys that were on my trip were, like I said, they were both in their 30s, and both of them had done really, really well in their tech startup company or whatever, and had a crap load of disposable income at an early age. But historically, that's
Mm-hmm.
not the case.
What does it cost to climb Everest? If you could estimate your total.
It's north. It's $100,000+ trip when
Okay.
you're all with the guiding and the gear and the travel and permits and all that stuff. It's expensive.
Okay. Wow.
It's a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
So
Well, thanks for sharing that story. It's really interesting to hear about that.
yeah,
So
my pleasure.
yeah, but you mentioning how it kind of hurt your real estate business a little bit, but that was okay because of your focus on lifestyle and everything. But you came back and you've had a renewed energy with real estate from what I've seen, and you're really starting to hit it hard and rebuild things more. So what are you doing with that, and what's your mindset now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so like I thought, like for me, the biggest takeaway that one of the biggest takeaways I had on Everest is that I wasn't prepared, right? And so then I looked at all the other pillars of my life, and I thought, like, gosh, where else in my life do I think I'm prepared and I'm fooling myself? And I was like, oh well, real estate for sure. My profession, like I've taken it for granted. Like I said, even out the gate and the whole, my whole career, I just thought it was super easy and it was no big deal. And so I came back off of Everest and I was like, hey, you know what? I need to get really recommitted to just the fundamentals of real estate and find that not passion. It wasn't missing passion, but I need to find like that seriousness of just like, did I know what to do? And I can't just take it for granted. I can't just twiddle
Mm-hmm.
my thumbs and be like, oh yeah, man, people are going to be calling me because I'm a great real estate agent. I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to cut it anymore. Like I need to go back to the basics, and I need
Yeah.
to work my database and work my sphere and get everybody's minds like back wrapped around that I'm Tim Murray, the realtor, not Tim Murray, the mountain climber. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
so here we are a year later. I switched companies. I joined EXP, which has made a huge difference in my ability to network,
Mm-hmm.
just nationally and internationally, and close deals all over the world instead of just in Denver or the Front Range or whatever. So that's been cool.
Mm-hmm.
Amongst other reasons, it's been very cool. The support that I have there is very cool. Um, and just the amount of education and reminders and resources for what does it look like to practice the fundamentals, and how do top producing agents that
Mm-hmm.
I've surrounded myself with at EXP push that same message all the time. That here's the fundamentals. Like, here's how many calls you need to be making a week. Here's how many lunches and coffees you need to be going to, and here's how it works. And it's like, yeah, I've known that all along, and I just took all that for granted for years. So now I'm actually applying myself.
Right. How
Mhm.
do you discipline yourself to actually do it? Because I think most people listening kind of know what that looks like. They have to make a certain number of calls, certain number of appointments. How do you keep yourself on track with that now that you're more focused?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Yeah, so I think, and it's funny because I'm a certified coach and mentor as well, and I teach. I've got a handful of mentees, young agents I'm working with right now, and we talk about that all the time. Of just like, how do you take your goals and break them down into actionable steps, and when you get distracted or deterred or whatever, how do you refocus on your why? Like, why are you, like, who cares if you sell a house or don't sell a house? And a lot of people will
Mm-hmm.
immediately go like, oh my God, because I need money. Okay, well, why?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
I know my why. In 4 years from now, I'm gonna spend another 6 figures on a huge ass dream, and it'd be really great if I had multiple 6 figures or 7 figures or whatever sitting in the bank, so I could just check out and do it.
Yep.
And so there's my why. Like, what's your why? And if you can't immediately pivot from the person that hung up on you, or you just lost your in the bidding war over the week. It's Monday, right? How many people are submitting offers in the last 24 hours, and right now is the day where they're just
Hmm.
crying at their desk because they got outbid? If you can't immediately pivot back into your why and pick yourself up and get on the phone and say, this is why I'm making this call. Like, I'm making this call because I want to help somebody become a homeowner, or I want to help somebody move out of their house into a better situation. And my big why that drives that, if I'm not clear on that, it's not going to happen.
Hmm. Well, and even breaking it down, for me at least, breaking it down even to small whys, like I want to be able to provide the best education for my kids. Well, that's kind of a big one, but
That's a
or
big one.
like I want to be able to buy myself a new mountain bike, let's say, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And my coach had a great exercise. He's like, write down all the stuff that you want. It may not all be material. It might be time wise. You want to spend time doing, going on a trip with your significant other or whatever it is. Put that list in front of you. And every time you decide to not make your phone calls for a day, just pick something on that list and cross it off. And that was for me, that was a big eye opener. Like, oh, okay. So this one phone call, it breaks down to just that. I mean, so I'm going to choose to not make the phone calls. I'm choosing to not spend time with my wife on a trip or get the
Yeah.
mountain bike or whatever it is.
No,
So
that's a
or climb
great,
Everest.
that's a great example. Like, you bring up the mountain bike. I'm like, I need a new one of those too. And you know what? The mountain bikes these days that I'm looking at cost $8,000,
Oh yeah,
And so every time
totally.
I look at my call list, it's super easy to be like, oh, right. If I make this phone call could probably buy me 2 bikes.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, you never know too. Like maybe it's not that phone call, but it's the fact of doing them. And then for everyone that I mean, everyone in sales has heard this. For every no, you're getting closer to the yes. So
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I often think about, when I was out on my morning run today, and I was thinking about the universe, and what I've been drawn to recently is that I feel like, I think a lot of people understand like flow state and being in flow, and like how do you get into
yeah,
flow, and like what does that even mean? And it's like, yeah, that one phone call might not be the phone call, but you're not just calling that person on the other end of the line. You're letting the universe know that you're taking action towards your goals, and you're being intentional, and the universe will respond kindly to that, right?
yes,
And like, and
absolutely.
I think a lot of people get in the weeds about like whatever, that I'm afraid, or I don't know how, or whatever. And if that's the energy you're putting out to the world, then you're not gonna get rewarded. But if you'd wake up and like, hey man, how unbelievably fortunate and lucky am I that I have a cell phone that's filled with names and numbers. And it's filled with names and numbers
Hmm.
because all those people are my friends. I'm like, why
Yeah,
would I make that like a scary thing? Like, how that's badass. I could just call people and say, hey, what do you think about the market today? Hey, what's going on? Anybody who wants to buy or sell a house? Are you
yeah,
interested in investing? You want to go shoot golf tomorrow with my lender? Or, whatever. Like,
yep, yep,
wow, that mindset and that energy shift of like playing in the universe of just, and I often think about it like like music. I'm just like I think about the strings of a guitar or the keys on a piano, and I'm like, yeah, every phone call I make is like picking one of those strings or pushing a note on the piano, and I'm singing out to the world, and the world's going to answer in kind.
hmm yeah. I always think about in my business, it's like weaving a big web. And it's like, oh, I'm adding all these strands to the web. And as I add more strands, the web gets bigger and it gets thicker, and it's able to well, I mean, it's kind of maybe a bad, attract more bugs to the web. But like, just more people I come in contact with, the more people and the more business that leads to.
100%. Yeah, all the interconnectivity is what it's totally about, connecting people. That's what we do.
Yep, absolutely. So you mentioned that EXP was a huge thing for you to join them. Why was that? How did that help your business so much?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it reinvigorated me on a couple of different levels. So I think I mentioned like having an international reach. EXP's in 24 different countries. I had worked after I left Keller Williams. I joined a really successful local boutique firm here, York Castle in Denver. I think a lot of people, especially in the investment community, probably respect and love. I do. I respect and love what Lon Welsh and Charles Roberts put together at York Castle, and we were all very, very successful there. And it was in all of its glory. It was still just a Denver, Front Range, Colorado, real estate company. And when I joined EXP, all of a sudden it was like, whoa, we've got almost 90,000 agents all over the world and in everywhere in North America. And so, one of the first transactions I did when I joined EXP, I helped my friend sell her townhome down in Centennial, and she moved to North Carolina. And it was the first time in 18 years of real estate that I was able to get online through the EXP network and be like, who are the top producing agents in Greensboro? Like who can help my friend? And my phone blew up. I mean, like annoyingly so. Where it was like, wow, I don't have to choose like one or two. I've got like 15 people begging me for business, and I got to sift through like who grew up here, who's got the most closings, who's really, of these 15 agents, which one's the best. Where my previous experience was like, hey, who do we know in XYZ city, and it was like crickets. Like, well, that's kind of that's not cool. And so, for me, that was really cool, especially with how much traveling I do. It was like I took a trip last July to Puerto Vallarta, and I had just transferred my license to EXP last July, and it was so badass to walk. There's a whole in downtown Puerto Vallarta. There's like a whole block of just real estate offices, and I walked into every single one of them. And I got to talk to every agent in there and say, "Have you heard of EXP? Have you thought about? Have you considered this international referral opportunity that's here?" And of course, it made my trip a tax write-off, which was fun. But it also just spiced up. It totally spiced up my ability to be an international real estate agent all of a sudden and have a referral network that was cool. And I think the big thing, EXP, Keller Williams, Compass, there's like everybody's trending towards this like agent attraction model that says like, hey, we're gonna pay you handsomely if you recruit other agents into our company. And EXP, their model for that is the best, hands down. And the way that their revenue share program works in that is unparalleled, And so I think, again, it was another revenue stream for me that excited me, because now if I'm looking at my call list every day and I get bored or frustrated with having the same old calls with consumers, I can just turn my production sheet over and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to reach out to some other real estate agents and just see what's going on with their business. And like, hey, where are you guys at? What's happening? If you're not absolutely satisfied with your current brokerage firm or your splits or your whatever, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to share with you why this company makes the most sense and how conversations like this can generate residual income and give you an exit strategy out of real estate. If you haven't already thought of that, I think most real estate agents are making so much money they don't really think about it. I think they just take it for granted. Like, oh, I can, I know for me, I'm guilty of it. I'm totally guilty of like, oh yeah, I'm going to be that crusty old Century 21 guy in a busted down Mercedes in a cheap fucking suit selling houses when I'm 85 because I can. And it's like, whoa, really?
Or
No.
because you can't stop, maybe too, is the other thing.
Yeah,
Another reason why you see some of those guys.
right, 100%. Yeah, because there's no
Yeah.
exit strategy. You're in
Yeah.
100% commission based sales, and you've lied to yourself for 40 years about saving money.
Yeah. And there's no pension.
Yeah,
There's no retirement account.
yeah, yeah, and that's where EXP changed that model like big time. And they said, hey, look, you can get agent attraction going and have residual income for the rest of your life by just inviting people to join the future of real estate with EXP. So,
Cool.
yeah.
So if someone would want to talk to you about EXP, how could they reach you?
Oh man, yeah. Wherever this is going, this podcast, I'm not sure where you posted, but I'm pretty open on Facebook and Instagram. Tim Murray Realtor at gmail.com. Tim Murray Realtor on IG. Tim Murray Realtor on Facebook. LinkedIn. I'm on there. Call me, text me, reach out to me. I'm pretty visible.
So just use that Google machine and find you because you're out there.
Yeah. Type in Tim Murray Realtor Denver, Colorado, and if it doesn't come up, somebody's dropping the ball big time.
Right. Nice. Well, hey man, you're an inspiration to so many people, and you definitely inspire me to, especially on your lifestyle stuff. So I appreciate you being on here and sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. And I think on that note too, I think for any other agents that are listening to this and like thinking about lifestyle stuff, I've been coaching a lot of other agents recently, like I mentioned, about how to work your hobbies and the things that bring you joy into your business. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. I think like RJ, you and I have spent a lot of time skiing together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely met and closed deals from a ski lift, or just like somebody's
Yep.
from out of state visiting Colorado and they want to buy real estate in Colorado because they fall in love with it. That's a no-brainer,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And I think the same thing when you're out mountain biking or playing frisbee golf or whatever your hobbies are, figure out a way to break down that barrier between that, like when you're out recreating, it's not mutually exclusive from communicating with other human beings, and that's our job as real estate agents and mortgage brokers, to communicate with other people.
Totally, 100%. I mean, I've experienced that as well. Closing business from the ski lift.
Yeah.
There's countless people that I've helped just from meeting people on the ski lift, and I carry business cards in my ski pants.
Yeah.
And friends that I know that I ski with, I let them know what I do, and it makes sense.
100%. Yeah, for sure.
And no shame in it either. I mean, it's what you do.
None.
So why not talk about it?
100%. Yeah. So anybody that's listening to this and is like caught up in that whatever career professionalism mindset that says there's some distinction between being locked onto your desk and onto your phone, and that's what professionalism is, versus being out doing what you love to do and interacting with human beings. That's why we're here, people, is to interact with human beings. I mean, it's cool
Right.
that we have the internet, and it's cool that you
Amen.
have your phone, and it's way cooler to be outside doing cool shit with your friends and talking about business. It's okay.
Yep. Absolutely. So this is inspiring too, because I could see how, I mean, you'd be a great coach with just mentoring people like in your organization and helping them with this kind of stuff, because way too many people are tied to their desk. It's the reality.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, man.
I know that I'm guilty.
Yeah.
I think we need to have a session because I
Yeah.
need a little bit of help there.
Nice. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. And anybody else that if you're inspired by this stuff, you want to talk more about it, reach out to me. I'm always available. I love to mentor. I love to coach. I want everybody around me to succeed, for sure. Like, just be the very best person, the best fulfilled human being you can be, and contributing to the people around you. I think that's really why we're here.
Awesome. Love it. Well, cool. Well, thanks again, Tim, for being on. And if you're listening to this show and found value in it, please share it with your friends that are in the business. That's how the word gets out, and that's how everyone grows and gets better. And also consider leaving a 5-star review. Definitely appreciate that. And everybody have a great rest of your day.